They launched without warning. Low, fast, coordinated. It wasn't the first time, but this time, it was different. This time, the Houthis weren't just testing defenses. They were trying to hit something massive. One of the U.S. Navy's most powerful assets. A 100,000-ton Nimitz-class aircraft carrier with a swarm of projectiles aimed straight at its heart. And here's the question. What actually happens when the Houthis attack a U.S. Navy warship? Do they ever get close? Do they ever win? Or do they just get erased? In this video, we're breaking it all down. Real incidents, real systems, and real consequences. You'll see what happens after the launch, during an intercept, and how the Navy strikes back when provoked. Because this isn't theory anymore. It's been happening. And the lessons? They're brutal, fast, and unforgiving. This is what happens when the Houthis try to go head-to-head with the most advanced navy in the world. They didn't start with words, they started with launches. April 2025, somewhere in the Red Sea, the USS Harry S. Truman was on routine patrol when alarms shattered the comm. Radar screens flared, multiple unknown contacts, fast, low altitude, no friendly IFF. Then came the voice over comms. Inbound multiple vectors, missiles, and drones. Within seconds, the carrier was fully alert. This wasn't a drill, and the Houthis weren't just poking anymore. They were aiming to break through. From the concealed launchers along the Yemeni coast, at least 6 cruise missiles, 2 ballistic rockets, and a loitering drone flew toward the Truman strike group in a tight saturation pattern. This was no amateur shot. It was coordinated, timed, and brutal. And it almost worked. While Aegis destroyers locked on and fired interceptors, SM-2s, ESSMs, CRAMs, the Truman scrambled jets. The deck roared to life. Sea Whiz turrets spun like angry beehives. And yet, one drone got close. Real close. An FA-18E Super Hornet launching mid-response was forced into an extreme evasive maneuver to avoid shrapnel from an intercepted drone. But it was a clear message. The Houthis could push hard. They could almost land a hit. March 2025. 2 weeks earlier, they actually did. Not a carrier, not a manned jet, but a $30 million MQ-9 Reaper drone shot out of the sky off the Yemeni coast. The Houthis wasted no time. They posted footage online like it was a trophy. Flames, wreckage, victory. What they didn't see was what the drone saw just before it died. Because that Reaper sent back a full telemetry package just before impact. Thermal spikes, GPS coordinates, radar emissions, enough targeting data to light up every monitor in CENTCOM. And the Navy? It already had eyes on. Within 30 minutes, Package Bravo was in motion. On board the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, flight crews prepped FA-18s with JDAMs and HARMs. Aegis destroyers cracked open VLS cells. Tomahawks launched, silent, fast, and deadly. The target? The exact site that fired the missiles. The result? Flattened radar trailers, fuel dumps vaporized, and command bunkers collapsed. The drone was gone, but it didn't die for nothing. Just a week before that, it was the U.S. Air Force that got the warning. A lone F-16 flying ISR cover near the Red Sea picked up a hostile radar attack. Seconds later, missile launch, break. The pilot didn't even blink. Countermeasures flared, 9G turn, defensive roll, the missile missed by 200 feet. Close enough to rattle the canopy. But that launch? It triggered a full-blown counterattack. Another Package Bravo mission spun up. Tomahawks flew, E-18G Growlers jammed enemy comms. Super Hornets dropped JDAMs on the launch site and its support infrastructure. One missile missed, but it left a trail, and that trail led to fire. And then, there was the big one. April 17th, 2025, Western Yemen. The Houthis locked onto a fast, high, silent target. Assumed it was another Reaper drone. Wrong answer. It was a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, the most elite, near-invisible bomber in the U.S. arsenal. They fired 2 Syad-class missiles. The B-2 didn't even flinch, it just disappeared. But it watched, it marked, it mapped. And within minutes, that bomber rerouted and released GBU-57s on that exact site, followed by JDAMs on command shelters, followed by 2 more B-2s, more Hornets, and the most precise retaliatory strikes of the entire Red Sea campaign. From launch to crater, 15 minutes. The Houthis didn't just miss. They made themselves visible. And to a B-2, that's like painting a target on your forehead. These weren't isolated incidents. They were escalation. In speed, in scale, in precision. The Houthis thought they could push harder without consequences. But by spring 2025, they learned something the hard way. If you aim at a U.S. warship, especially a massive one, you don't get to walk away unseen. Because even if your drone gets close, even if your missile launches clean, even if you think you caught them off guard, the Navy has layers, systems, allies, and eyes in the sky that don't blink. And when they fire back, they don't send a warning, they send a message. The U.S. Navy doesn't fight like a blunt hammer. It fights like a system. During the Eisenhower engagement, aerial radar from E-2D Hawkeyes, on-deck launch coordination, and electronic warfare support from nearby Growlers all worked in sync. Aegis-equipped destroyers provided overlapping coverage, feeding each other targeting data. By the time the last drone crossed into the threat range, it didn't even get a chance to blink. And just beneath the surface of all this chaos, Iran. Multiple U.S. intelligence reports throughout 2023 confirmed that Iranian IRGC tech advisors were helping upgrade Houthi drones and missile guidance systems. Those Shahed drones, Iranian design. Those Syad missile variants, Iranian fingerprints. Those coastal launchers buried inside rocky outcrops, Iranian playbook. So when we reached 2025 and the Houthis stepped up their attacks, this wasn't some overnight surprise. This was the result of years of building, testing, and tweaking their tactics. And through it all, the Navy adapted. Faster threat detection, more aggressive patrols, shifted strike group formations, interceptor rules that evolved from hold fire to launch on radar lock. Because they learned something early. These weren't pirates with AKs. These were operators with real weapon systems, real backing, and a goal: to hit something that bleeds on camera. But what they failed to realize was that, even back in 2023, the Navy was already one step ahead. The missiles they fired, logged and backtracked. The drones they lost, retrieved and reverse engineered. The launch sites, tagged, cataloged, and waiting. So when 2025 came, the Navy wasn't reacting, it was executing. So what are they firing anyway? Because this isn't junk from a scrapyard. These aren't pirates lobbying RPGs at cargo ships. The Houthis have turned Western Yemen into a launch platform, and their arsenal is growing more advanced by the month. Let's start with the drones. The most common, the Shahed 136. Small, fast, and built to die. It's an Iranian-designed kamikaze drone, packed with explosives and programmed to loiter over a target area before diving down at the last second. Think of it as a flying IED that doesn't knock. They've used them in swarms, 15 at a time in some cases, trying to overload radar systems and sneak one through the Navy's layered defenses. Then there's the Kasef 2K, also drone-based, but with a blast fragmentation warhead designed to hit softer targets, like radars, fuel trucks, or flight decks. These things are cheap to build and hard to trace in flight. But the bigger threat? That's the missiles. The Syed-class SAMs. They're modified Iranian surface-to-air missiles with enough range to target high-altitude aircraft like the F-16s and even MQ-9 Reapers. Some versions are radar-guided, others infrared seekers, designed to chase the heat signature of jet engines. And then there's the cruise missiles. Low-flying, sea-skimming threats. Think Iranian Sumar variants, modified from Soviet Kh-55s. These weapons can fly under radar, turn mid-flight, and strike ships up to 200 to 300 miles out. Some have even been intercepted just minutes from impact. Ballistic missiles, though? Yes, they have those too. Medium range, GPS guided, and launched from mobile trucks hidden in Yemen's mountainous terrain. These are less accurate, but if one ever gets through, it's game over. And let's not forget electronic warfare. According to multiple military assessments, the Houthis have also been experimenting with jammers, decoy drones, and radar ghosting. Tactics that try to confuse shipboard sensors long enough to open a hole. But here's the kicker. None of this exists without Iranian help. Tehran has supplied tech, trainers, parts, and likely targeting data. Every drone downed by the destroyer, every intercepted cruise missile, it's another entry into our growing ledger that points east. So the next time a Navy ship sees something on radar, they're not just watching for a rogue rebel strike, they're watching for strategy, for fingerprints, for escalation. Because the Houthis might be the ones firing, but they're not alone in the shadows. Why this threat is bigger than just the Navy? Here's the thing. This isn't just about one destroyer dodging missiles or one carrier shooting down drones. It's about what happens even if one of those threats gets through. Not just for the Navy, but for the world. Because the US Navy isn't just sailing for show. It's protecting one of the busiest, most strategically critical waterways on the planet, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This narrow stretch of water connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and beyond that to the Suez Canal. You know what flows through here, don't you? Roughly 12% of all global trade. Oil tankers, container ships, LNG carriers, billions of dollars in cargo moving every single day. If a Navy warship takes a hit, or even if an attack almost lands, it spooks insurers, diverts shipping routes, and drives up global fuel prices within hours. It's happened already. In late 2023 and early 2024, repeated Houthi attacks forced multiple shipping giants, Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, CMA, CGM, to reroute vessels around the Cape of Good Hope. That's an extra 5,000 miles of sailing. More time, more fuel, more cost. And it wasn't because they were hit. It was because the threat was real enough. For the Navy, this creates a new kind of war zone. One where combat readiness meets economic pressure. A single drone buzzing too close to a carrier isn't just a military risk. It's a geopolitical spark. And for the Houthis, that's the whole point. They don't have to sink a warship. They just have to shake confidence, force a reaction, make the world nervous. But here is where it all backfires. The moment they cross that line, fire a missile, hit a drone, threaten a convoy, the Navy doesn't just shift formations. It triggers strike packages, air cover, retaliation. Every false move invites a very real response. So while the Houthis think they're targeting steel and sailors, what they're really gambling with here is global stability. And that's a game that they're not equipped to win. When the Houthis fire, the Navy doesn't even flinch. It calculates, confirms, and then it erases. You see, retaliation in the modern US Navy doesn't look like Hollywood. No dramatic countdown, no cinematic speech on the bridge. It's more like clockwork. Silent, precise, and when it hits, you don't get a second chance. They call it Package Bravo. It's not a threat, it's a sequence. A pre-approved multi-domain strike doctrine designed to launch the moment a Navy asset is fired upon. And when a drone went down in March 2025, Bravo was unleashed. First came the Tomahawks, launched from vertical cells aboard Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. These cruise missiles are GPS-guided, terrain-hugging, and brutally accurate. Each one travels hundreds of miles to hit a precise grid square, usually the spot where the enemy just launched from. Next come the Growlers. EA-18G electronic warfare jets scramble first, jamming enemy radar, spoofing comms, and creating electronic chaos before the real firepower arrives. They're the smoke before the thunder. Then, the FA-18 Super Hornets, loaded with GBU-38 JDAMs and AGM-88 HARM missiles. They fly in tight formations, striking command bunkers, radar dishes, and missile launchers, all tagged by drones, satellites, or previous telemetry. And speaking of drones, there's always the MQ-4C Triton or Reaper somewhere above the target zone. High-altitude, wide-area surveillance platforms feeding live video and thermal imagery straight back to CENTCOM and carrier ops. The battlefield isn't just seen, it's painted. Now, when a stealth bomber like the B-2 Spirit gets involved, that's when you know it's serious. In April 2025, after the Houthis tried to hit a B-2 with Syad missiles, they got a response that didn't involve tweets or press releases. It involved GBU-57 bunker busters, dropped from 50,000 feet, that tore apart underground launch facilities before anyone could even run. That mission, over in under 15 minutes. The B-2 was gone before the fireball hit the horizon. These are not reactionary missions. They are designed responses. Silent, measured, and devastating. Because when you launch at a U.S. warship, you don't just wake the fleet, you trigger the hammer. And by the time you realize it's falling, it's already too late. So far, every drone, every missile, and every loitering munition has been intercepted. But what if one didn't miss? What if a Houthi cruise missile made it through the Navy's layered defenses and struck the flight deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier? It wouldn't just be a battlefield incident, it would be a global crisis. A carrier isn't just a ship, it's floating American power. A $13 billion symbol of dominance, housing over 5,000 crew members, dozens of jets, and the ability to launch combat operations anywhere in the world. You hit that, you're not poking a giant, you're punching it in the throat. The U.S. response wouldn't be limited to just Tomahawks and FA-18s. It could escalate into deep strike operations, regional lockdowns, or even the activation of Article 5 discussions with allies if coalition assets are involved. And Iran? Expect immediate pressure, economically, diplomatically, and perhaps militarily. Because while the Houthis pull the trigger, everyone knows who built the gun. So far, nothing has gotten through, but the Navy trains like it already has. Because they don't bet on luck. They bet on layers of steel, fast missiles, and sailors who know exactly what to do when seconds matter. And that's the difference between survival and headlines the world isn't ready for. So what do you think? Should the U.S. Navy strike harder the next time a carrier group gets targeted? Or is the current strategy, hit back only when necessary, the smarter play? Let us know what you think in the comments. Because this fight is far from over. The drones are still flying, the radars are still spiking, and the next launch might not be a warning. It might be the one that slips through. And if it does, the response won't just be precise, it will be absolutely overwhelming. Thanks for watching. If you learned something today, hit that like button. And if you want more true stories of modern naval warfare, make sure to subscribe. And hey, if you want to go a step further and support the channel directly, join the fleet. You'll get loyalty badges, priority responses, and you help us bring more true maritime stories to the surface. Click join on our channel page and get on board. We'll see you next time.